all things Aussie hoops and NBL fantasy. Three blokes catching up over a can of three. So many things that we cannot wait to see. Will Josh giddy up as he drives to the cup? Will Luzada play harder for last year's runners-up? Will Magnay's got his sights on the NBA, but will Bryce be an Aussie? He's gonna stay. We love Space Cam double-doubles and 4-point shots from Bubbles, the Great Dane and Mitch and Lamar across the ditch. The Hawks signed a bloke named Justinian, and next year we'll love the Tasmanian.
Brace for the puns and dad jokes. It's time for the Basketball Blokes. G'day viewers, you're here with Benny from the Basketball Blokes today, dribbling all things Aussie hoops and NBL fantasy. And yes, Connor Henry would say that we are dribbling too much, and if you're not a fan of Benny dribbling too much, then you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed. Decided to get stuck into this NBL fantasy review episode. We're hoping to catch up with the guys from Skype, but we're all living that dad life now. So this, though, could work out good because I'm going to show you a few things that would be best viewed in a video setting now. So for those of you podcast listeners, it might be worth checking out this on Twitch or YouTube or Periscope via our Twitter at bball_blokes. Now, we are doing a review show, so let's get stuck into it.
Weak side, strong side, in the zone or fading away.
It's time to face up and look over and back at the round just gone.
This is the NBL Fantasy Post-Round Review.
All right, so what we're going to do here firstly is, as we would normally do, we normally do the King Legend Award. We've made it a little bit different this year. What I want to show you is our poll results, our early poll results from our Twitter page. And as you should be able to see now, we've done the Genuine Import of the Round. So this is going to be our award, and this is from US Sports Down Under, who only deal in genuine imports, and that's what we like here at the Basketball Blokes. So we put the poll out of Justin Simon, Scott Machado, Cameron Oliver, and Kiefer Sykes, who should be the genuine import of the round, and it's runaway Justin Simon. Now, talking about Justin Simon, I think he could definitely have been the one got away. We'll go through the games and talk about that a little bit later, but while I'm here, I just... oh, there I am. Just noticed Sparksy, well done, number 2 in the world from NBL Fantasy. So very good, but let's keep going around the grounds as we would normally do, looking at our ordinary bloke first. And this week it's the Oracle Boydie and the Deep Ballers. You can see here one of our awesome Patreon leagues. We had plenty of great discussion on the Discord channels about in each of these leagues. It was really good to have that head-to-head feature of fantasy. So Deep Ballers with a score of 607. I know he's... well, we might ought to have a bit of a perv here, actually. So he got Sloaned, as we all did, I believe, and started Jock on the single and had Dengadell as well. So probably hurt the Deep Ballers a little bit there. If we go back, we can see Banksy's team, Cavalicious, was the average bloke this week with a score of 654. Banksy got Sloaned, as I mentioned. I had that Dengadell, though. He went the big 3, which was good. And but unfortunately for Banksy, as we'll get into, he's got Tamuri Wigness on the bench, which could be an issue with what he gets to do with Josh Giddey leading up. And for myself... the team get on the cans, and I certainly did that. Scored 691, pretty solid. Got Sloaned, and I had Jack McVeigh as well, with the hopes of maybe having Ruben Tarangi come in to my team next week, and that's definitely going to be a change of plans now. So that's how we all stood. I'm sitting on top bloke Benny. I'm very happy about that. So let's go through now and have a look at the we'll go through game by game just quickly because because there wasn't that many games, so it probably gives us an opportunity to do so. So, firstly, as I like to do, is do a bit of a pun down and of the first game. What was supposed to be the throwdown was in fact the throw up, as United obliterated Adelaide. Now, some pretty good scores in here. JLA, Landau and Jack White. Big decision for me leading into this round was to go with Landau or White, and so it would have been a combination of Landau and Wigness or White and Sykes, and I've made the right choice there. Jock Landau looked fantastic, to be honest, so he's going to be someone that we all want in our teams, but I'm very happy with choosing my boy Jack White. And also with JLA there, 52 points. Now, something I'm going to go through now and show you is something that's going to be, after this podcast, it's going to be exclusive only to our Patreon supporters. So we're doing some advanced stats this season, and they include going through the 4 points, fantasy points for and against, which I've just brought up for you here. Couple of highlights. So we've got obviously the Hawks and Melbourne United and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix as the 3 highest scoring fantasy teams. Adelaide, Brisbane and Cairns were quite evenly grouped, with the Sydney Kings having the lowest average score 4 with 204. So Adelaide and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, obviously courtesy of a double overtime match, certainly didn't help for their points conceded against, but look at that, 309. I know that on our cheat sheet that we had for our pre-season Patreon package subscribers, we highlighted that in the pre-season as well, and even last year, that Southeast Melbourne Phoenix were the team to own against. But look here, we've got the Hawks and United have combined for obviously 2 of the 3 highest points for in the fantasy perspective, but the points against United and the Hawks significantly less there. You got 160 for United and 219 for the Hawks. So doing it at both ends of the court, and it's going to be interesting whether or not this is the Gorgon factor, the points against. Last year it was obviously, we talk about teams getting Perthed and having to avoid almost playing against Perth, but something else that we're going to be sending out on a weekly basis is breaking down the fantasy points conceded to positional groups. So we've got the guards here in front of us now, and you can see that Adelaide, Southeast Melbourne and Sydney gave up the most fantasy points per game to guards, which are in fantasy terms point guard and shooting guard eligible players. And if you look down at the average, so this is up here is the total points per game, and down this bottom half is the per player average against wings that were guards that we're looking at the moment. So you can see here Southeast Melbourne giving up 120 points to guards at a clip of 30 per player. If we move along to wings, we've got what do we got here? So Cairns and Brisbane actually gave up the most points to wings, which is basically anyone with a small forward eligibility in their positioning for NBL fantasy. And we've got United just shutting down the 3 small forwards combined for a total of 30 points when in that first game with Adelaide taking on Melbourne United. You can see there. And Bigs, which is the most important position in fantasy because all the double-double potential. Southeast Melbourne obviously giving up a heap to Big Hump and DJ as well there, at an average of 146 points at an average of 36.5. So Hawks as well, double overtime, and obviously had no Bairstow, no Deng Adele tonight. Gave up quite a few points against bigs as well. Now, as I was going through some of those Melbourne players, I just wanted to show you, this is points per minute. Fantasy points per minute is also something that we'd be giving out to our Patreon subscribers. So I mentioned JLA there earlier, coming in, just smashing the field really at 3.12 fantasy points per minute. Now, in our predictions, a bit of a humble brag here, but in our predictions podcast, I predicted JLA to be that player that I hadn't talked about very much in the preseason that I thought could go big. And when he was out there, I think Homicide was making fun of him every time he was out there. He was jacking up a shot or just ridiculously active. And Joe Luel Akul, 3.12 fantasy points per minute. Some other ones as we go through here. We've got Hunter from the Kings at 2.17. Harry Froling at 2 as well. Harry had a great game. And just another one I wanted to highlight, had a great game just then, is White from the Hawks at 1.63. And he was that hustle player that just came in and got on the boards, being undersized, and that's shown through in his fantasy points per minute. He was very productive whilst he was out there. On the negative end of things here, hurts me to see Jack McVeigh, Craig Moller there. I actually thought Craig Moller was going to be in for a pretty decent role there, but the Sydney Kings actually had, before the Cairns Taipans tonight, having 202 fantasy points per game. They had 204 fantasy points in their game, so there wasn't too many fantasy points going around for the Kings, with Moller and Ware highlighted here at 0.6s there, DD Lazada at 0.5. So the Kings really struggled to put fantasy points on the board, despite coming so close and having Ware with the buzzer beater at the end of the day. And Ruben Tarangi, the second worst fantasy points per minute, but more about Ruben later, because I think that role that he had, getting so many minutes, was actually an overall positive. So I'll be compiling this in a newsletter of sorts to go to our Patreon supporters, and if you want to do that, you can, looking now at our Patreon package tiers, you can join for $1 a month, which is basically just buying us a virtual beer. But if you do $2 a month or above, currently our Patreon preseason package is obviously sold out because it's not a preseason anymore. You'll get this weekly email with all of these advanced stats, which I'll be sending out tomorrow for the guys. Now, back to our Twitter poll and US Sports Down Under. One thing I want you to do, obviously you can go to our Twitter and you can follow them on their social media, but obviously as we see here, the merch is legit, but have a look here. The most recent post they've put out is you've got your Super Bowl venues are out now. That's always a comprehensive list, and the best list you will find out there for your capital city. But my go-to at US Sports Down Under, and I follow them on all the socials, is this TV guide. Just honestly, get on board, follow them on the social media, and this Australian TV guide for all your NFL is a godsend. I've got to work out what channel you're going to be watching it on, or whether you're going to have to tune into Red Zone that day to watch your crappy Houston sports team. Is the case in my case. Get on board the socials of US Sports Down Under for sure. Back to some of these United players as well. Udai Barber is the other one I wanted to mention. Looked really good as a point of difference to Vasiljevic with 28 fantasy points there. Obviously, whether or not he'll continue to get that sort of run with United, hopefully in a few more competitive games going forward, who knows. So the next game, though, we had the Hawks versus Brisbane, and Justin Simon managed to steal everything, and yet he still managed to avoid the law as the Hawks dodged the bullets. Now, wanted to talk... we're going to talk about the Hawks players a little bit later on, but wanted to have a look at a few of the Brisbane Bullets players here as we go through. So, Harry Froling, very popular, 1,200 owners for his 56 fantasy points. looked very good, as did Vic Law. Now, Vic Law is obviously someone that we're going to have in our teams at some point in time. So, not too sure what the injury update is for Hodgson, but that means very good things going forward for both Harry and Vic, and price rises should be expected for them. And Tamuri Wigness as well, as we can see in this list here, had 12 fantasy points. Should get a little price increase from Tamuri. Anyone that owns Giddy, though, probably will need to be trading him out, as we'll discuss shortly. So the next game that we had was, in fact, the Kings and the Cairns Taipans, and it was Cairns that remained the Kings of the North after a hard-fought battle with Sydney. We had Space Cam in early foul trouble for this one. Missed heaps of blocks off the official box score as well. I know Banksy compiled a video of that. He was so furious that all these blocks weren't going to Cam on the official stats. But good to see. I was worried about Banksy, first captain's choice of the round, but he came out good. But I know that Bordy was stressed about Machado early because he was going to have a double-double early. But looking at the Kings players, Jordan Hunter at the top there, top scoring with 39 fantasy points. Definitely a great performance. And with the injury situation, no Kickett there, no Cooks. It was Hunter rather than Moller, as I expected, that put up the good fantasy game, and in fact was third overall in that earlier list of fantasy points per minute. So played very well while he was out there. Speaking of playing very well while he was out there was Jarrell Martin. Now, Jarrell had 22 fantasy points, and this is good for us because he looked awesome, and it's just a matter of whether or not the sports scientists are going to let him get some court time. Jarrell should have a slight price decrease, and if that is the case, we're looking like getting a potential bargain going forward. He looks to have a really good all-round game, and he will be in our teams. Hopefully we get some more schedule out soon. Everyone's favourite shooting guard, Dejan Vasiljevic, scored 20 points, looked really aggressive, really liked the way he looked, although he did get outscored by Bubba at the end. All right, thanks very much for that. 2 games to go. Next up, we had the Phoenix, who could not get over the hump in double OT, losing to the 36ers. Now, first things first, and it hurts us all to say that the old Sloan dog will not be a millionaire anymore, expecting a price drop from Sloan. And let's have a look at some of these scores. Okay. You'd have to look right down the bottom there to find Donald Sloan. Big decision for me was to play Harvey or Sloan early days, and I went with Sloan on the back of Tommy Hirsch, really pumping him up. Had a 24-point game in the preseason, and Tom came out and told us that was not going to be his normal game. Normally he'll fill out the box score in some other ways. Now, part of the thing that tipped me over was I knew that Donald had the double this week as well. So the thought to me was, if something else blows up in my team, at least I don't have to trade Donald Sloan. I'll still have a player on the double. And as that turns out, this is what is happening. As you can see at the top of the list there, Josh Giddey scored 111 points, looked amazing. Banksy's prediction that he'll be a top 3 fantasy point guard is looking really good. And maybe that's got to do with average, though, because he will, in fact, miss the next game against Southeast Melbourne coming up. I think it's on Wednesday night, pretty soon. So if that's the case, I'm fortunate. You're probably going to be in a couple of different spots. You'll either have paid up for your $1 million Kiefer Sykes like me, which will just be put Giddey on the bench for the first game, or put Giddey on the bench, hope he can get back for the second game of the round, and if he does that, he'll just about be guaranteed another 100k price rise, which would be really good. and you're getting the Kiefer Sykes points as well. If you've got Machado at 6-man, potentially trading Machado into your point guard spot and trading Giddy could be a solution. Obviously, we're going to get some more schedule out, hopefully, before next lockout to help us make those decisions. Logic says that Adelaide will continue to have a good schedule whilst they are clear of COVID, and players can travel via Adelaide and go elsewhere as well. I spoke about getting over the hump. There's plenty of humps in a roller coaster, and that is what Isaac Humphries fantasy owners went on. Scored 89 for the round. Only 9 of that came in the first game, and 80 fantasy points came in the second game. Now, as you can see at the top of the list there, there's Isaac Humphries and Daniel Johnson both scoring in the 80s. It was another big decision people had to make, to pay up for Humph or to go with DJ. I went with DJ personally because of the injury cloud, which kind of proved correct for the first game of Humphries' round, but it was in fact the right move to go Humphries over DJ. God, it hurt. Boydie didn't play DJ at all, and getting some messages on the group chat from Boydie saying that he's feeling a lot better, seeing all this overtime without Daniel Johnson, who no doubt would have just kept scoring and kept racking up rebounds, probably got the double-double. Speaking of double-doubles, though, man, there's some massive fantasy takes out of this, and we'll just focus in on the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix boys for now. Yanni Wetzel, the pretzel. Don't get it twisted. He's very, very good. Now, for a Phoenix fan, I can't believe we wasted Yanni's game of 20-plus point double-double with a half-court shot and some block shots. To lose that game by missing free throws, and I think Yanni was a culprit as well, really, really hurt. But from a fantasy perspective, Yanni's arguably startable, and we're going to hopefully get together over Skype tomorrow and do a preview podcast. And that might be a question that you might ask, is Yanni startable in week 2? But Mitch Creek was very much weighing up whether to go Creek from week 1. He had 66 points against the 36ers now. Obviously plays the 36ers first up next week, and then he goes to Perth. So I know he struggled against Perth last season, and that'll be for Banksy's captains, which you'll get later on in the week as well. But just for Creek's games against Adelaide, so he's had scores of 81 fantasy points, 70, 63, and 66, which the 4-game average works out exactly to 70 fantasy points per game. So it'll be up to Banksy to have a look at those Perth numbers to see whether we can trust Creek going up against the likes of his favourite in John Mooney, or whether or not Creek is a number 1 potential captain option. Kiefer Sykes, from a fantasy scoring perspective, was very unlucky. The game went to overtime. From a basketball perspective, he looks great as far as being able to get to the hole and facilitate. And once again, as a Phoenix fan, seeing all those missed threes was just brutal, and I really wanted John Robertson back at that moment, because Cam Glidden, as we see next on the list, who scored 25 fantasy points, did not deliver, but the usage was great, and I still think Cam is a potential play next week as your starting shooting guard if you want to get rid of the Sloan dog. Yeah, it's still an option for me. I think better fantasy scores are yet to come. And speaking of the opportunity, if we highlight at the bottom of this page on your screen, Ruben Tarangi and his 11 fantasy points, which were also overtime assisted, very much so. Worst points per minute just about of every other player except for Tom Vodanovic in the entire league as far as fantasy points goes. Like I said, I had planned on starting Ruben Tarangi next week. I'm not too sure if I can do that. Once again, the opportunity was great. Shot the ball really poorly. Looks good coming out of the hand. Nice rainbows from Ruben, but just did not find the net. Interesting, Kendall Stevens didn't play. From that 3-point shooting perspective, it'd be interesting to see how he goes. So obviously, I've talked about McVeigh a little bit for Adelaide as well, and Crocker was the other one who had a little bit of a bounce back game against the Phoenix, but put up a real Barry Crocker in the first. And I don't know that he's going to be a relevant fantasy player for us, but maybe he'll hang around for a couple more weeks, and Twitter was having him shipped off. Now, the most important thing out of this all is the Josh Giddey news injury, and so who gets the bounce from this? We'll have a discuss about this in the preview show, no doubt. But for those, there's a lot of 368 of you Dan Dillon owners could get a bit of a boost there, and for those of us that are going to be brave and hold on to the Sloan dog, hopefully he will have a more productive game and it can avoid some of that early foul trouble. So plenty of players there to look at. Bordy's favourite, Keanu Pinder, also proved to be a good option at 300k, starting on come out of nowhere, to be honest, that Keanu would be the starting power forward, I think. But averaged 18 points for the round and will definitely go up in price. And should go up in price next round if that role persists. So really good from Keanu there. Final game, though, one I've just watched, and it was amazing. The Hawks were just incredible as Jessup and Simon simply smashed the cans. And now it's time to talk about Justin Simon, who obviously was very high up in that list earlier in points per game that I showed you, and he scored 135 fantasy points for the round at shooting guard. So, add 100 points to my fantasy score if I had gone Simon over Sloan, and I'm probably sitting pretty well, I'd say. But for that, it's only 126 of you at that that started Justin Simon, including I think the leader, no doubt, will have them in their team. Let's have a look at these rankings, actually. So, always like to see this. Mickey Mouse, McKinley Sugars. I must admit, halfway through that game, that McKinley Sugars was Sarah Sugars, because I took a photo. It was quite funny to see that there was two Sarah Sugars coming in first and second. If you're going to cheat, plan your cheating a bit better, to be honest. So that was no good to see. But as we also have a look through, it's always, got the husband and wife combo, no doubt, of Nicky Grice and Matt Grice, of course, both Brisbane supporters in 6th and 12th. So well done to Nicky for beating Matt there. No doubt, probably a husband and wife team. So always interesting to see those. As we flick through here, some familiar names as well through the rankings as I'll quickly go through. We've got James Galley, Mark Lanyon, a couple of Patreon supporters there, and Nikolai here, also a Patreon supporter, doing very well, sitting in the top 50. But one thing of note, Thomas Aiken, the K-Dogs, sitting in at 38th, last year's champ. So the man, I don't know how he went in BBL fantasy this season, but he actually took out both the Big Bash League and NBL fantasy competitions, winning them both last season. So great start from Tom, the K-Dog. Again, someone who received our cheat sheet, and great start so far. So plenty more Hawks to talk about, though. So Tyler Harvey wasn't really hurting us too much, our Sloan dog owners, in that first game, but come out and shot the lights out, as did Justinian Jessup in the second game against Cairns, both scoring over 50 fantasy points and really hurting those Sloan owners who, for me, I was planning on trading out that shooting guard position after 1 week, and it's cost me some points early for sure. Sam Froling, great production. Obviously had Cam Bairstow out for this game, and something that both Boydie and Banksy copped was the Deng Adele injury. Hopefully we get some more news by the time it comes to the review show, but the beneficiary of that was Deng, no doubt, with the Big Bear and Deng Adele missing out. I must say that he looks fantastic. It's great to see him getting an opportunity, and definitely for those owners would have been happy with that second game. If we look up that bring up his profile here, what do you have? 23 fantasy points in the second game. So well done to all those Deng owners out there. Didn't quite get my boy Jack White though. So some other sort of broader thoughts before I wrap up. The old snag pit, the Bunnings, it's supposed to be the place where lowest prices are just the beginning, but I think it did prove that the right move was to pay up for both Machado and Oliver. Whether or not to fix some things up in your team, you need to keep them, is going to be interesting. I think that for me, with McVeigh currently sitting at small forward, the move is going to be very tempting to downgrade probably Machado to Mitch Creek, and then Machado to someone significantly cheaper, one of these maybe power forward options, and start Yanni potentially. We'll have to wait and see, but to get McVeigh up to Creek, don't think I'm going to be able to stomach Ruben Tarangi starting on my field. So I think that's going to be it, guys. So sorry that it's going to be a sort of an ungodly hour for those tuning into the live stream. This will, in fact, be included in podcast form if you're listening to the podcast. A lot of the stuff was visual today. It won't always be like that. This, with the short turnarounds, it's going to be tough for us all to get together at a reasonable hour. For example, tomorrow night, if you're listening, or if you only listen to the preview podcast, that will have been recorded at some time starting at 10 p.m. And then there's all the editing and stuff like that needs to go on after that. But I hope this has been good, and it's hopefully all the technology's worked and it's something that we can do. I'll have to teach the boys how to get on it as well, so Banksy's can get his captains out like this as well. Thanks very much, and we'll see you for the preview pod. Cheers.